country giving talks saying that the reason things can't get done in Washington is because of the phony scandals that are being scandals that are being talked about. Well, what's he getting at here? What's he trying to do here?
Well, he's told us on a number of occasions, just recently spoke in Chattanooga, and before that in another state, in which a number of times he said, if indeed Congress will not act, I can act on my own. And so whether it's the speech that he gave at Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, the most recent one here in Chattanooga, he keeps coming back to the idea that I will use executive authority to help the middle class. If Congress won't act, I won't wait for Congress.
He's still saying that?
Yeah, and so this is what he's using. He's saying, I want to help the middle class. We just can't wait on Congress, and we can't be distracted by these phony scandals, which by that I guess he means Benghazi, the NSA, the IRS. We can make the long list. We don't need to have that much time. And so he's going to use this, I think, to make a case for him using executive orders and actually enforcing various kinds of things that Congress never passed through the executive branch. And I think that's what's really going on right now.
Well, the phony scandals phraseology that he's using there is insulting to the intelligence of the American people who watch this. There are scandalous things at hand here. With the IRS going after conservative groups and denying them, singling them out based on their political agenda. I mean, they're based on their political ideology. The wiretapping and snooping on the reporters at AP, the Benghazi debacle, where we had 4 dead Americans, and people like Secretary Hillary Clinton go, "What does it really matter?" At this point, she says, the brazenness of the unaccountability of people like President Obama on this, and call it phony scandals. I mean,
and especially when he contradicts himself, because just take the IRS one as one example. He said as soon as he heard about this is something we need to deal with. This is of concern.
Right.
And then a few weeks later, it's a phony scandal. It's just,
you don't have a phony scandal. Let me tell you something. It's not a phony scandal when the director of the IRS takes the Fifth Amendment before Congress.
Right.
Okay. That's not a phony scandal. And when the IRS, one of those, the Shulman or whatever his name was, who was in charge at the IRS, went to the White House, morning, noon, and night for a couple of years, and then it turns out that, the IRS is going after conservative people and groups. And this is not this. To say this is phony scandals
is an insult.
Yes, it is. It's insulting. The president should not say something like that. It's not true. I think he's trying to, some people say, Kerby, that he's trying to he's trying to diminish the seriousness of those issues that we've talked about. But secondly, his, quote, economic plan, which I'm not one personally, folks, and you may differ with me listening to this program. Kerby may differ, John. I don't hold presidents accountable for the economy. For the most part, I don't care.
They can do some harm, but they can't do a whole lot of good unless they just get out of the way.
I agree. Republicans or Democrats, I think it's way overstated that the power that the presidency has on the economy, in my view. If that were the case, if what I'm saying is true, President Obama would have had the economy booming by now, because you remember he went after Bush on the economy. How terrible he was. Well, here we are 5 years into his administration, and it's not any better. It's arguably worse. So
it is worse because the median family income has dropped about $5,000 during that time.
Right. So
people are making less than they were.
So I just think that's overstated the impact that but I think you're right. A president can get in the way, if you will. I think President Obama has done that with a lot of his regulations and the things that he wanted to do, which leads us to this whole other subject of Obamacare.
Obamacare, there you go.
Obamacare is wildly unpopular with the American people, despite the fact that they reelected the man it's named after. Last November, it was unpopular then. So they didn't. The American people, by a slight margin, it wasn't overwhelming, by a slight margin, reelected President Obama, despite Obamacare being a 60 plus percent of the American people, at least the last survey I saw, don't like it, and the other 40% don't have a clue what it's going to do. So, and I do this occasionally, Kirby. I ask our radio listeners to hold their hand up if they understand Obamacare, and I'm seeing one guy in Ohio right now, and that's it.
Not me.
That's it. Nobody understands it. So. And people are starting to warn us, even Democrats, like what's the gentleman's name who's a senator from Montana? Baucus?
Baucus, yeah.
Who's a Democrat who helped draft this massive piece of legislation that passed along party lines. Now, make no mistake about it, folks. For better or for worse, the Democrats completely own Obamacare because that bill was passed along party lines. Democrats all voted for it. Republicans voted against it. President Obama signed it into law. As you remember, that's when the Democrats control the House and the Senate. So they own Obamacare. The Democrats do, as again, if you for better or for worse. So, but here we are, and it's looking like it's going to be for worse, Kirby, to the average American out there. But you want to comment on that?
Well, and I think that gets us into tactics because, as I think some of our listeners have been following, you have people like Senator Rand Paul, Senator Ted Cruz, and most importantly, Senator Mike Lee, that have said we cannot fund this because it will be implemented starting January 2014. Now, the president has already postponed the business mandate, but the individual mandate will be implemented. And Ted Cruz, who is my senator, and I had his father in the studio just the other day, has said we can't let this go any further because people might eventually get addicted to those subsidies. So they're calling for a fight on the floor, saying that they will fund the government, but they won't spend a dime for Obamacare, even at the risk of shutting down the government. Now, there have been other senators who said, no, I don't know if we can or should do that, but this gets into a little bit of a debate about tactics, which is why now you're starting to see all sorts of legislation, the Ted Cruzes of the world, talking about defunding Obamacare. Then you have others like Senator John Cornyn, also from Texas, having filed a bill that would prevent the IRS from enforcing Obamacare, and then others that have put forth legislation to delay the individual mandate. But the bottom line is even though there may be a little bit of an intramural disagreement among a lot of the Republican senators and members of the House about tactics, they all want to bring about some kind of defunding or stopping of Obamacare for fear that if it gets even partially implemented, it will be much more difficult to deconstruct and dismantle later on. So I think you're going to see some very significant debates and battles between now and October 1st when the next fiscal year actually takes place.
Well, I love Ted Cruz, Senator Cruz from Texas. I can't find hardly anything I disagree with that guy on. I think he's wonderful.
Yes.
However, I'm kind of the opinion, Kirby, and I think good people can disagree on this, that, and I know some people listening to me are going to say, that's crazy. I think you need to let Obamacare fall on its face, let it show up for what it is, and let the American people suffer. Because here's why I say that, and I don't mean it like I'm callous here.
Right, like
okay,
you want the American
here's
people
what
to
I'm
suffer.
saying.
Yeah.
People need to see that socialism does not work.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Okay, and it's a mess, and it's expensive, and you can't get something for nothing. And if the Republicans try to get in there and gum things up by doing different tactics, as you mentioned, Kirby, I'm afraid then the Republicans are going to be blamed. And I'm more conservative than I am Republican. Let that be on record here. But then the Republicans are going to be blamed for messing things up. You see what I'm
and
saying?
that's what some of the senators are saying right now. They're saying, you got the Richard Shelbys and even the John McCains and Richard Burrs and others saying, wait a minute, maybe the better way to do is, like you said, for our listeners, they've run the numbers here, and just let's look at a few of our listeners in various states. They recognize that the premium hikes on Obamacare will go up at least 40% in Florida, as high as 72% in Indiana, 88% in Ohio, but the all-time winner is Georgia. Any of our listeners in Georgia, they're estimating the premiums will increase by 198%.
Wow.
So
Well,
some of these
undoable.
people are going to have sticker shock like they had never imagined. And the policy, we were assured that if you like your policy, you get to keep your policy. If you like your doctor, you get to keep your doctor. They're going to find out these state exchanges are going to say, nope, you can't keep your doctor, or you can't keep this policy. And people, I think, starting January 1, are going to be overwhelmed by what Obamacare means to their pocketbook.
Do you understand what I'm? Yeah, John.
I got it. Yeah,
Kirby,
I got
you see what I'm saying?
There's a lot of merit to say, and just let it explode, even though it might hurt people in January. It will be a wake-up call to a lot of people right now that are much more interested in the royal baby or the Kardashians or whatever.
Yes, I'm saying that this is a good teaching moment for America to learn that this kind of social engineering, this socialism that's being pushed by the political left and the Democratic Party in this country defies common sense, and it's impractical, and it's hugely expensive, and the old thing your mama told you, that you can't get something for nothing, is still a reality, and so I think this could be a time where you could let this thing play itself out to show it to be the miserable failure it's going to be, or train wreck, as a Democrat senator has called Obamacare. Then you could say this ideology that's being promoted by the political left in this country is harmful to a majority of Americans and does not work. And so that's my view. You said who did you said subscribes to what I just said? Shelby?
Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina, of course, John McCain in Arizona. He was saying that people are tired of the government-led debt ceiling and government shutdown stuff. Richard Shelby, Alabama. I mean, you've got quite a number that have had questions about this, and some of them are conservative, some are moderates, but you've got some that agree with Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and Rand Paul, and others that don't. And I think when it's all said and done, we're going to have something that looks like Obamacare, and like you said, if it could be a real teaching moment, but I hate to unleash that on the American people.
I know. I agree, but the American people also elected Obama, so there you go. But
elections have consequences.
Yeah, save us from ourselves, so to speak. But folks, don't write me letters or emails. I know what I've suggested can be, ideologically beat back by somebody like Ted Cruz and maybe Kerby Anderson here. So I'm just suggesting, or as they say, I'm just saying. Okay. But Obamacare is coming our way, and you said if you live in Georgia, your premiums are going up how much?
Almost 200%. The estimates came down the other day, so I'm just quoting news sources here, and they said 198% premiums in Georgia, because they're actually in Georgia. The officials right now in Georgia are asking for what's called an emergency delay after they discovered in theirs the premiums could rise that much. Now, you might say, why does it rise more in one state than another? Well, real quickly, I won't make this real complicated. Each state has different mandates. Mandates mean you have to cover certain kinds of things. And, for example, if you're in a state that says you have to cover psychiatric, for example, New Jersey might be a good example, where you can pay almost 4 times as much for an insurance policy in New Jersey as you would in Pennsylvania because they have more mandates. So in those states, the increase isn't as much as it would be in a state that has more of a free market that says you can choose different kind of policies, and if you want one that has more benefits, fine, but you have a policy that has fewer mandates. In other words, we want to keep the lowest rung on the ladder so people can still reach to it, and that's why a state like Georgia and some of these others will see such an increase, because the state exchanges that Obamacare will implement, or the national exchange, will say you have to have these mandates, and before you were able to buy a cheaper policy. I hope that makes sense.
Right. See, when I heard about Obamacare, it was like, oh, you're going to have cheaper insurance because of these exchanges. It's going to be cheaper for you. It's going to be cheaper. And now we're finding out that just is not the case. And then here in Mississippi, as far as insurance companies coming in to be a part of the exchange, from what I heard here in the state of Mississippi, there's only been one that even wants to do it.
What you got here, folks?
What kind of marketplace